director, Demaurice Smith, spoke to USA Today on Wednesday and said the goal of the players' union is to emphasize the underlying issues in treatment in the early phases of the drug program rather than getting players to stop smoking weed. Stephen A., do you agree with Demaurice Smith and his stance on marijuana?
Absolutely not. I think it's a disgraceful stance, but I do understand why he has to make it, because he represents the players, and on behalf of the players, clearly there are issues, and you have to do whatever you can to protect them. So this is not to knock Demaurice Smith in any way. He's simply doing his job as a union leader, but it doesn't make it any less disgraceful. Let's be very, very clear. 87 players have been suspended for substance abuse in the National Football League over the last 3 seasons, totaling $66.9 million in losses. I don't know about you, Max, but I've never seen a joint that cost that much. Never in my lifetime. Josh Gordon lost $1.4 million last year just because of weed. Lord knows how much money others have cost, but we know collectively, cumulatively, $66.9 million in salary have been lost because you can't stay off the weed. That makes no sense whatsoever. And we can sit up there and talk about how it alleviates pain and all of that other stuff. I got all of that. Everybody's got a doctor. Go to a doctor. Get it prescribed for medicinal purposes, and maybe, just maybe, I'll have an argument. But when we talk about weed being used recreationally, and ultimately it elevates itself to addictive proportions, and then the union wants to slide in the back door and say to the NFL, let's make sure we recognize this, not just when they get caught, but let's decipher the difference between you using something recreationally or you being addicted or you having a health issue or whatever the case may be. I'm willing to hear that argument if it's health related. If it is not health related, and by health, I mean a doctor prescribing it for medicinal purposes. You have some cancer patients that use it for medicinal purposes and beyond. Something like that, I'm all ears. Outside of that, I'm sorry, last time I checked, we all have to exact and exercise and employ discipline in our chosen profession. There's a lot of things I would want to do at work that I can't because it's work, and ESPN doesn't want to allow it. The same might be with you, Molly, or you, Max, or others. I don't want to hear that nonsense. It's absolutely positively embarrassing that this is a subject that is being addressed. It's flat out embarrassing.
You are so wrong about this. In fact, I find that stance embarrassing, Stephen A., and I will tell you why. It's all based on the premise that marijuana is something it's not. Now, the policy in the NFL will weed out, so to speak, the real addicts. Absolutely. And those people have a problem. They are addicted to marijuana. I agree. Whatever the claim is about the addictive properties of marijuana, psychologically or in some other way, they can't give it up because they're jeopardizing enormous financial security, et cetera, in their professional careers. So they have a problem. The only reason we know why they have a problem is because they have an absurd law that rule that should actually be illegal in the first place. And what Demaurice Smith is saying and the players' union is saying is, let's look at if for that pool of addicts, let's look at the underlying causes of the addiction. Since marijuana, from a medical sense, from a scientific sense, doesn't have addictive properties. So it's something in the person's personality. They're self-medicating, maybe it's for pain, depression, etc. Let's look at that. Now, do I think that that even needs to be done? No. You know why? Because the only reason marijuana is perceived and treated the way it is because the federal government has been lying about it or else willfully ignorant about it since Harry S. Anslinger, the drug czar, continuing through Jeff Sessions, the current attorney general. They have either been willfully ignorant or lying about it. It is not a Schedule I drug. It is technically because of those political lies, essentially, but it is not in terms of the science. Any of the science, none of it, should it be classified as Schedule I drug. It should be treated, if anything, like alcohol, which, again, according to every measure, is actually worse for you and for society than marijuana. Now, if someone's misbehaving and breaking rules in another sense, and they look into it and it turns out it's alcohol related, they may have to go into an alcohol problem. But alcohol in and of itself isn't tested for. They don't randomly go in and test for alcohol. And by the way, half the states in this union now realize the bogus claim that marijuana should be treated differently than alcohol. But at a federal level, it still isn't. The NFL doesn't have to pay attention to that. They choose to be lockstep with stuff that is simply unscientific, that is untrue. While they're in bed with alcohol companies, they're peddling it on TV during the commercials. They're business partners with drug companies, essentially, that peddle a much worse and more destructive drug than marijuana. They don't randomly test for alcohol. What you're talking about, Stephen A., these players are being busted not for bad behavior, but for violating a policy that shouldn't be there in the first place. And sure, if you put that policy in, you will weed out the hardcore addicts. Yes, just as you would if you put an alcohol policy in.
That's that level right there of alarm and ignorance that should concern us all. I don't want to hear that nonsense about what rules should be in. There's a whole bunch of rules that shouldn't be in, and not just in the world of professional sports in corporate America, but they are what they are. Those who have the gold make the rules. That's the way it goes. If you don't like it, go someplace else and collect a check from a different source. It's just that simple. When you look at, and by the way, I wish you and others would stop making this argument that I am making the case that, oh, my goodness, stay off the weed, but feel free to drink all the alcohol you want. I'm not saying that. As far as I'm concerned, the NFL are a bunch of flaming hypocrites. They should get rid of alcohol just like they get rid of marijuana. I'm not making a call one over the other. I'm simply saying what the rules are, the rules are. And if you know these rules are in place, I go to a different level. I don't go all scientific like you do, Max. I'm simple in this regard. Excuse me, the rules are in place. Is smoking some weed worth millions? Yes or no? And when these guys who grew up poor in large proportions made the ultimate sacrifices to their bodies, their minds, on behalf of themselves and the upliftment of their families, are willing to jeopardize all of that because they can't stop puffing, I got a problem with you because you blowing everything you work for. What do you mean that's what it's about?
That's what the union... The players' union is essentially saying, look, you should, like, when you say, well, those...
But that's why I didn't blame them.
But that's what the CBA is. It's a negotiation as to what the rules should be. And what the players' union is saying is, if you're going to keep this absurd and hypocritical rule, then at least let's tailor it to make some sense. Instead of just saying, bad addicts don't work, why don't we address the underlying causes of the addiction if we're going to weed out the addicts in the first place? That's all the players' union is saying.
But that's why I did not say, that's why I did not blame Demaurice Smith. You represent the players. You're their union leader. I get it. I understand it. That's why I absolved him from my diatribe. All I'm saying is this. You got the NFL. They're talking about being an institution, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. It's not just about football. It's about life after football. The span of your career is 2.5 to 3 years and all of this other stuff. But you're going to have dudes rolling around all over the place, all high, or high off the weed, and then all of a sudden, you're going to sit up there and go like this. Well, we want you to know that we're sensitive to what ails you. We're sensitive to what plagues you. But you're going to send them out in the real world in 3 years when you made it okay for them to get puffed up and high and all zooted out? That's stupid.
They're not
That's
talking
nonsensical.
about getting high in the workplace. They're talking about, just like they're not talking about drinking in the workplace.
After work, Stephen A. They're going to get high after work.
Really? So you're going to get high in the afternoon. So you're going to be all right. Hold on, Max. I just want to be clear. So you're going to be all right. I just want to be clear. You're going to be all right while you practice it. But you're going to go home after Sunday after the game or a week later, whatever the case may be. And it's all right to be high. Oh, by the way, it's all right to continue to get high during the off season when your career span is 2 to 3 years. What kind of a citizen are you going to be when it's over?
The only reason it's a problem is because it's a rule against it in the first place. That's what they're trying to negotiate.
Got to leave it there. Sorry, Max, but what I deduced from this conversation is that if you blow, you can blow everything. On that note, the Splash Brothers...
Let me come on first take, Max.
...turned Crash Brothers as Steph and Clay can't buy a bucket last night. Should the Dubs be worried about losing the #1 seed after losing back-to-back games for the first time in 2 years? And up next, all-pro running back of the Steelers, Le'Veon Bell, will join us. Will he finish his career in the Steel City? We'll ask him that next. First take.
Paid, getting in a better situation to take care of his family. But in the end, he is, at 27 years old, he's been banged up the last couple of years. He's a guy that doesn't create separation. I mean, he makes good plays as far as going up and getting the ball, but he doesn't create at the line of scrimmage as far as separation. So you're going to have a quarterback that can throw in spots to him. There's a lot more work and more upside when you have to deal with Alshon Jeffrey. And to me,
agree.
he's never proven to be a #1 guy. I mean, you know what you have in Brandon Marshall.
Although when
you
he
have
was
a #1 guy, but I don't know if Alshon has been that guy who can carry his team as a #1 receiver.
When they were together, sometimes it was hard to tell who was better. And by
That's
the way,
not true.
poor
He
Brandon Marshall, you
Because
mentioned.
Brandon Marshall was getting doubled. I mean, of course you're going to go.
That's right. Brandon Marshall was clearly better.
Poor Brandon Marshall, the best quarterback he ever played with was Jay Cutler, Stephen A. Look, if you're talking about the who would you put them both on a scale, who weighs more in terms of value? Yes, I agree, Brandon Marshall, but there's more to it than that. If a team like New England got Brandon Marshall on the right kind of deal, that's one thing. But assuming there will be bidding for them, assuming we're talking about sizable contracts here over years and the attendant kind of cap issue that comes with that, I believe that Alshon Jeffrey is not only the better deal, but over the next 5 years has a very good chance to be the better player. And at the end of that 5-year period, again, he'll be Brandon Marshall's age now.
Whatever receiver you're thinking about getting, it ain't for the next 5 years. It's for the next 2 to 3 years max. That's #1. And #2, let me tell you something, Max, right now. You could say Jay Cutler was the best quarterback Brandon Marshall ever played with, but not this past season. The season before last, Ryan Fitzpatrick was better than Jay Cutler has ever been, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think
2 years ago.
I mean,
2 years ago.
They're comparable.
2 years ago, yes.
2 years ago. 2 years ago, Fitzpatrick was okay. He was like league average, maybe.
And that's a hell of a lot. You're not getting my point. That's a hell of a lot better than Jay Cutler's ever been. That's my point.
Jay Cutler had a couple
is
seasons
a hell of a lot
that
better
good. At least that good.
Stephen A., I want to spin it forward. I know these guys want to go to contenders, but we have teams like the Bucks, Rams, Titans, Niners. They're all in the need of a receiver. What do you think would be good potential fits for a Brandon Marshall or an Alshon Jeffrey?
I like an Alshon Jeffrey in Tampa because there are no title expectations. You know, with Evans in the crew, with Jameis Winston throwing the football, having an additional weapon at wideout, somebody that has the long term, that you've got a long-term view with. I like that possibility for him. With Brandon Marshall, I'm thinking Pittsburgh. I'm thinking New England. I'm thinking spots like that, to be quite honest with you. Even Oakland, if he could find his way there. I like a Brandon Marshall in a situation like that.
Yeah, I can see Brandon Marshall, again, a veteran team that's on the cusp, with New England Patriots type of team. Hey, listen, even here we go with the Cowboys, but even a #2 position with the Cowboys, I mean, you can find some spots for Brandon Marshall, but he's not going to go to a team that's in a rebuilding process. The kid wants to win a Super Bowl. He hasn't even won a playoff game. So he's trying to, don't start. But anyways, he's trying to get some.
And he's trying to get Darren Woodson. Teed it up.
Darren Woodson just sat up there and said he's never had a playoff win. He's never won a playoff game, but he needs to go to the Cowboys.
I teed that one up for you.
That's funny.
But when you look at Brandon Marshall, this is a guy that he hasn't won a playoff game. He's trying to get to the ultimate.
Then he don't need to go to Dallas.
But
he don't need to go to Dallas.
I'm not even saying just Dallas. I'm saying there's teams that are out there that deserve that #2 guy. That he can be that guy. But again, Alshon Jeffries is going to be about the money. I see a team like the Tennessee Titans are a team that run the ball and they need a deep threat at the end. I think
good offensive line.
Rams, Niners, there's a lot of them.
Yeah. I will say this. Let me be very, very clear. I'm good with my man Brandon Marshall. That's my brother. Just spoke to him a few minutes ago. If he goes to the Dallas Cowboys, I'll never speak to him again. I'll never speak to him again. I will never speak to him again.
He has that ring on his finger. You'll be speaking to him.
Ring. What? A wedding ring? He's married already. He don't need him. You damn sure ain't talking about no championship ring. You can stop that nonsense.
You need to bring my championship rings in here.
Bring it from the 90s. Bring it from the 90s. I don't have no problem with the 90s. Bring it from the 90s.
How many decades do we have to go back?
There we go.
You guys are all haters.
My hairline was here, Darren. My hairline was here.
How many rings do we all have together? Three.
Yeah. Three.
On that note, Darren, thank you so much for being with us. Always fun. Appreciate the insight.
Get out of here, you cowboy.
So disrespectful.
Get out of here.
The Warriors did something last night they haven't done since 2015. Find out what that is. Coming up next, and Le'Veon Bell is maybe the best running back in the